didn't just leave. They didn't just go empty-handed. No, 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 no. They went. They had property. They had silver. They had gold. They had food. They had They had their cattle. They had everything that they needed to survive. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference when they got their freedom. They didn't just get their freedom and just said, okay, now you go and survive. No, 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 no. They had resources. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference. All right. How everybody's doing today? Good to see all of you. Y'all looking good today. You're looking real good. Well, I'm Will with CTC Lifestyle. Um, where we believe that serving God is a lifestyle, it's not a religion. We're here to help you if you're trying to strengthen or build your relationship with God. And we believe that in doing this, it will also help you understand who you are, carry out your purpose in life, and fulfill your destiny. So we're gonna jump right into it today. You gotta forgive me today, guys. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. I went out and took the flu shot, and now all of a sudden I'm sick. But a lot of people say that's why they don't even take the flu shot. But I was just trying to take it to be safe. But so you got to forgive me. You might hear some coughing, sneezing, sniffling, things like that. But I just want to make sure the word gets out, and I want to follow through and stay consistent. So having said that, today, we have a lesson that's going to be coming out of pretty much Exodus chapter 20. And within that, there will be the story for today. It's going to be called Special Delivery. Special Delivery, or the delivery of the special notes here. Let's see. Just want to check on something right quick, guys. Sorry about that. So, within the story here, that's called Special Delivery. Again, it's going to be talking a little bit about Moses here. It's going to go into the book of Exodus, which is the second book in the Bible. Um, and basically, we're going to be talking about a little bit about Moses. We're actually going to go into how he received his instructions, and we're going to talk about the plagues that happened in Egypt. Then we're going to talk about the parting of the Red Sea, and then the wilderness there. And finally, we're going to finish it off with talking about the Ten Commandments. So today's lesson is just the goal, and today's lesson here is going to be about basically the Ten Commandments. A lot of people don't believe that the Ten Commandments still apply to what we do today. A lot of people that read the New Testament say that, hey, that's the Old Testament. That doesn't matter anymore. But I just want to bring this up because even Jesus said in the Gospels there that follow the commandments, and one of the Pharisees tried to test Jesus as well by saying that what's the greatest command? All of them. I mean, he told them, hey, love God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul, and love thy neighbor as you love yourself, which is basically treat people as the way you want to be treated. So they still matter. And so I just want to give a little bit of background. Some of you might have heard this story. Some of you might not have known anything about it. But I just want to break it down in a way that it's understood and people actually know about it. So, without further ado, we're going to get started. Today we're able to send and receive messages without any trouble at all, and we are able to send and receive messages on our phone. Through email, through messenger, through social media, through platforms. Um, it wasn't always convenient like that. At one point in time, before all this technology and everything got involved, it was so frequent. We had to use the mail, USPS, which pretty much stands for the United States Postal Service. Now, this is probably considered, not probably, but this is considered snail mail nowadays, because you're able to send a message through email, and again through all in many other platforms like that. But in those times you had to send it that way. You have to send a letter, message, um, and if you want to send maybe like a item or a package or something like that with this letter, you would have to get companies, wouldn't have to, but if you wanted to, you can get companies like USPS, I'm sorry, UPS or FedEx, and they would cost more as well, and you're still able to use them. You're probably able to use a lot more. DHL is another company, but before all of that, even before all of that, people were actually the messenger. You know what I mean? And goes back to the beginning of time. And basically, a messenger had to be very dependable. They had to deliver the message on time. They had to deliver it accurately. And God created or appointed a lot of messengers or prophets. And one of them was named Moses. Okay, and basically, the message that we want to deliver today, that message that Moses delivered back then, was the Ten Commandments, and he had to deliver that in a way that God instructed him to do so. And then we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. So to start off, we're going to talk a little bit about Moses' background. Then we're going to talk about how he received his instructions. Then after that, we're going to go into the plagues of Egypt. After that, we're going to talk about the Red Sea and, them spending some time in the wilderness. And then after that, we're going to talk about the commandments, the Ten Commandments as well. So a little bit about Moses and his background. Where was he born? Moses was born in Egypt. He was born in a time when there was pharaohs, and basically, when he was born, there was a creed out, and they basically set it up to where all the Hebrew boys were to be thrown into the Nile, be killed, basically, and all the Hebrew girls could live. And so basically, his mother at the time was pregnant, and she had tried to hide him, after she had him. And basically, he got to a point where she got to a point where she couldn't hide him anymore. And so at this moment, that's when she put him in a papyrus basket, put him in the Nile, in the river, by the reeds, in the river there. And at that moment, he began to flow down. But during this process, his sister was sort of watching him in the basket as he rolled down, but his basket ended up going toward the Pharaoh's daughter. And Pharaoh's daughter saw it and said, "Oh, this is one of the Hebrew boys. I'm gonna take care of him. It's gonna be my son." And so basically, what she did was she went and told one of the Hebrew women, which ended up being Pharaoh's Moses' mother, ended up taking care of her own son, because she didn't know that was her son. You know what I mean? So anyway, she was paid to take care of her son. Daughter went back and told her and got her, and then basically she was able to take care of her son. So her son lived. And Pharaoh at this time, this was pretty much was some believe that this was Ramses. There's a lot of disagreement, discussion about that, but that's just one of the pharaohs at that time who people may believe that's who he was. Now, eventually, Moses got a little bit older, and then so that's when she gave him to Pharaoh's daughter. When Pharaoh got him, that's when she actually named him Moses, and his name means I pulled him from the water. You know what I mean? I pulled him from the water. Or drawn him from the water. And so that's what the name Moses means. So after that, Moses got older, and basically, and it didn't say how old he was exactly, but it mentioned that he did get older. And one day he was out there and he saw the Egyptians, I guess beating on one of the Hebrews there, one of his own people. You know what I mean? He got upset. He got mad about it. And he ended up, looking to the left, looking to the right, and seeing him nobody was looking, and he killed the dude. You know what I'm saying? Try to hide his body. You know what I mean? In the sand there. So in doing so, he basically tried to break up another fight later on, and then one of the guys said, "Hey man, what you gonna do? You gonna kill me like you killed old boy?" You know what I mean? So he didn't know anybody saw him. So after that, he had to run off. And he went to Midian, which is another place, another location, a foreign land at the time, and then at that moment there, that's when he stayed there because Pharaoh's gonna kill him. You know what I mean? Because Pharaoh had found out about it. You know what I mean? But there he met his wife Zipporah, and he had his first son named Gershon. Gershon basically means that I'm a foreigner in a foreign land. And so that was a little bit of background about Moses and where he was born and what happened. But I do want to point out the fact that he did kill the man, and he didn't kill him in self-defense. He killed him out. That was, today you look at that, that's probably considered premeditated murder. Not probably, but it is. But I said it to say that God forgave him for that. You know what I mean? So whenever we thinking about something that we did in our past, we ought to know that God can forgive us for that as well. So we should just forgive ourselves, and keep moving forward. So lesson two there, the second part. This is where he received his instructions. So um, in chapter 3, by the way, the background of Moses was in Exodus chapter 2. So we're moving to chapter 3 now in Exodus. And so basically, he was on Mount Horeb. Basically translating to the mountain of God. And so he was there. He was tending the flock, flock of the sheep there. You know what I mean? With his staff and everything, and of his father-in-law's sheep. So he saw this bush that was burning up. You know what I mean? It was on fire, but it didn't burn up. It just stayed lit. You know what I mean? And so he was curious about that. He was like, "What? How is that possible? How is that happening?" You know what I mean? So he went and walked over to it, and come to find out, that was God's way of getting his attention. Okay, to the burning bush. And so after that, he heard God's voice. He called his name Moses. Moses, you know what I mean? Told him come near him. Told him to take his shoes off because he was on holy ground, you know what I mean? And then from there, he pretty much gave him his instructions right there on Mount Horeb. Now, that's when he basically told him, he gave him this instruction. The message said, hey, I need you to go to Egypt. I need you to free uh, all the Israelites. You know what I mean? And Moses was tripping. He was like, man, what you talking about? He was afraid too because remember he had killed that dude back there. So, but this all years had passed at this moment, and so the old Pharaoh wasn't even in charge anymore. I think he had died. But long story short, a lot of time had passed between then and at the time, and so basically he was clear to go back. God had given these instructions. So when he had said, "Nah, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't want. I don't want to go." Basically, that's when God told him, "Okay, well, because the main reason why he didn't want to go because first of all, he thought he couldn't do it. You know what I mean? And then second of all, he said, well, what if they don't believe me? Because he told him to go to the elders, and basically go there to tell them that, hey, God sent me here to free y'all, you know what I mean? Because they were praying and everything, and so God heard their prayers, and so he sent Moses out there to answer their prayers through him, you know what I mean? So at that time, that's when he said, well, I tell you what, if they don't believe you, they don't believe that I sent you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to throw out your staff, And the staff was pretty much like this stick, or it kind of looks like a cane, but basically that's what they would use to kind of make the sheep go in the right direction. Say, hey, go over here, go to the left, go to the right. And so that was the instrument that they used. And so he told him to throw his staff down. Soon as stepped down, he threw it down on the ground. That's when it turned to a snake. Shoot, Moses took off, man. Moses, walked up like, hey, you know what I'm saying? Well, what's going on here? But that was a sign of something he can show the people that he was sent by God. And so after that, he told him, hey, put your hand back out. And then when he put his hand back out to reach for it, that's when it turned back into his staff. You know what I mean? So that was the first sign. Second sign, he told him, he said, okay, I'll tell you what. His hand, was pretty much there. I don't know if you heard it, but there was a skin disease called leprosy, and basically it would make your skin turn white, and just basically it was a skin disease. You know what I mean? So it wouldn't, you obviously tell somebody, and it was contagious. So people, would stay away from people, and they wouldn't try to come near people. Long story short, he made his hand turn leprosy, and leprous, you know what I mean? He put it out and he told him, look at it again. And so he made his hand go back to, normal. That was a second sign to show that, hey, I'm the one that sent you. You show this to them, and then they'll believe you. And the third sign was basically to take water from the Nile river at that time, because the Nile River was the one and only main river that flows through Egypt. And so basically told him to take the water from that river there and pour it out on the ground, and it'll turn into blood. You know what I mean? So those were the three signs, you know what I mean, that he were to show the elders, to let them know that, hey, God sent me, and these are the signs, because we as humans, we got to see some proof, man. Somebody say you sent me, or somebody sent you. Well, show me a proof. How do I know that? You know what I mean? How I know you ain't lying. You know what I mean? And so that's the reason why, God told him to send those signs. Because He knows us as humans, we're not, we want to be convinced. We want to see a sign. You know what I'm saying? Before any of that happens. Okay, so interesting thing happened there, after going into this right here in chapter 4. That's where it kind of talks about the signs there. And something interesting happened too. Eventually, that's when he basically still didn't feel confident enough, you know what I mean, to go out and do the job. And so that's when he arranged it to where his brother Aaron, because he had more confidence in him, that he could actually go out and speak better, because he said he couldn't speak well. He wasn't eloquent in his speech, you know what I mean. And that's happened with us a lot of times, you know what I mean, to where we don't feel comfortable talking, you know what I mean, in front of a lot of people, or in front of a king or somebody with this, statue or whatever. So he arranged it to where his brother Aaron was going to just basically assist him with this task. So they were out, man. They went to Egypt, and all of this happened in chapter 4, Exodus. So they went to Egypt and everything, and they was on their way. But something interesting happened, though. Moses was God was about to kill Moses. You know what I mean? It doesn't exactly say why, but it does say that he was about to kill him. And so his wife Zipporah, so she was traveling with him. She cut out the foreskin, yeah, the foreskin of basically circumcised, their son there, and basically put it on his feet, you know what I mean, and in some way that was a way of showing God that, hey, it was like a sacrifice, if you will, you know what I mean. And so at that moment, that's when God let Moses live. All right. So we're going to our third part here. This is about the plagues in Egypt. Now, eventually they got to Egypt. Everything was going well. He met the elders. He showed them the signs. They believed him. And so at that time, that's when he had to go talk to Pharaoh. Now Pharaoh was like, at this time, Pharaoh's the king. He up there, you gotta come in. You can't just walk in and just talk to him. He's the king. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta bring gifts and offerings and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Long story short, he came in. He said, "Hey, man, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. You guys are gonna hear those three names a lot. In the Bible: the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. That goes back to the Genesis there, and we're gonna go over that, in another series here, another video. But he was saying that's the God, you know what I mean, of them, you know what I mean, and that's basically where God who made his first covenant, which is the promise to them. So after that, he went in and talked to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said, "Man, I don't know about your God. No, he talking about he sent you." But Moses was just saying, "Hey, he sent me here to let the Hebrews go. You know what I'm saying? You gotta let them go." But you know what I mean? At the time, the Hebrews, they were doing all the labor, all the free labor. They were the slaves there. So he didn't want to let them go. You know what I mean? So he said, "Nah, I'm not letting them go. What you talking about? You know what I'm saying? Let nobody go." And so, he said, "Well, show me a sign." He wanted to see a sign too. And so that's when he threw his staff down. Well, Aaron at the time, Aaron threw the staff down, his brother. And so when he threw the staff down, that's when the staff turned into a snake. Now, Pharaoh had his own sorcerers and, magicians and things like that. And so they threw their staff down too. They made it turn into a snake. But their Aaron's snake swallowed up both of their snakes. You know what I mean? And so they never even seen a snake swallow up another snake. They like, whoa, hold on. Then after that, boom, it turned back to the staff, went to the hand. But he wasn't convinced. You know what I mean? So this is when it went through, and this is when it went through a lot of a lot of the plagues, the 10 plagues. Okay, the first plague, it all started in chapter 7 there. That was the bloody Nile River. That's when he made the river turn into blood. And in the course of these these plagues here, Pharaoh would come back and say things like, "Hey, yeah, you know what? Hey, man, I pray to your God, to your God to stop, and maybe we can, get back, and basically maybe we can be friends again." But then all of a sudden, when he would reverse the plague, that's when Pharaoh would go back and harden his heart again. Basically, he would lie to him and say that, "Hey, I'm gonna let your people go." And then all of a sudden, when the plague would go away, then he'll say, "Oh, I ain't letting your people go." And so that's why it happened 10 times. So the first plague, chapter 7, was a bloody Nile river. So he made the river turn into blood. You know what I'm saying? So remember, they had fishes and everything in there. You know what I mean? So that was their source of water. You know what I mean? Food, bathing. So the whole thing turned into blood. You know what I mean? So the second plague, that's when he made frogs. I'm talking about frogs everywhere. We're not talking about a little frog here and there. I mean, frogs were all over the place. They were all in the house. They were all over the floor, all over the ground, all everywhere. You know what I mean? And then three, that's when the gnats. This was in chapter 8 when they start talking about the gnats. So he made all the dust on the ground turn into gnats. Think about that. There's a lot of dust on the ground out there. You know what I mean? And so all the dust on the ground turning into gnats. You know what I'm saying? I can't even stand gnats, flying around me right now, man. I got one or two of them flying around me. You know what I'm saying? I'm sitting there like, oh my God. You know what I mean? So I can imagine, well, I can't even imagine, to be honest with you, millions of them flying around everywhere. You know what I mean? So in chapter 8 as well, that's when they have the plague for the flies as well. So that's 4 plagues right there. Then in chapter 9, that's when we talk about the livestock. And so basically, the livestock, that includes the horse, the donkeys, the camels, the cattle, the sheep, the goats. Now, he basically put a plague, had a plague on them to where they all died. You know what I mean? They were relying on their animals for everything back then. I mean, we still do. That's how we eat. We eat them, and they do work for us. You know what I mean? So pull loads and everything. So basically, that was they put the plague on them, so they all died. Now, interesting thing happened though when you got to remember the Israelites were living there with the Egyptians. You know what I mean? So all the Israelites, their livestock and the water they were drinking and the place they lived, it didn't have these plagues. You know what I mean? But the place where the Egyptians live, that's where all these plagues were going. And so that's the reason why he basically had it pointed out to where, it would only happen to their towns and not to all the other towns around there. So, continuing on with chapter 9, you have the hail and the lightning. You know what I mean? And there was a storm, a thunderstorm. It was the worst thunderstorm ever. You know what I'm saying? That happened in Egypt since it had been established. You know what I mean? So very large storm. Lightning coming on the ground, hail coming down, and it was killing. I mean, pounding up everything. It damaged a whole lot of stuff. I mean, people in the field, the animals, whatever. You know what I mean? Property. And so after that, well, before that, actually, you had the balls on the skin. There were balls, again, this was happening to the Egyptians. It wasn't happening to the Israelites. So there was balls being put on their skin, man. So they had balls everywhere. You know what I mean? And that's pretty bad, man. You know what I'm saying? Because, I mean, you get one ball somewhere, that thing hurts, man. You know what I mean? So imagine having balls all over your body. You know what I mean? Everybody, not just you. You know what I'm saying? So, you had that, the hail, and then you had locusts. Now the locusts are pretty much like grasshoppers, if you will, but locusts they're a little different from the same species. But locusts, they were flying around everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Now there were so many of them that they covered the face of the ground. Think about that. You couldn't even see the ground because there were locusts everywhere. They were in the trees, they were inside of your house. I mean, they were everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And again, every time when one plague would come, Pharaoh would say, "Hey, okay, tell your God to stop. We'll let the people go." Then all of a sudden, he'll lie. No, they can't leave. They can't do it. And so that's what kept happening. That's why it kept happening about 10 times. No, not about, but 10 times. Okay, and so that happened in chapter 10 with the locust there. And so chapter chapter 9, that's when you had the plague of the darkness. It was dark for 3 days. And remember, this is the time when there was no street lights, you know what I mean? Around, or no lights at all, not light bulbs like we have today, you know what I'm saying? So they were all around. So they was dark for 3 days, so they couldn't even see each other. They couldn't see nothing. So, you know what I mean? Again, you know, Pharaoh, yeah, man, we gonna let you go. We gonna let you go till you God to bring back the light. You know what I mean? Bring back the light, and guess what? Lie again. Nah, they can't leave, man. They can't leave. Change my mind. So God knew what he was doing. God knew that it would take him 10 times. So he basically hardened his heart just so he can do that. That's what the Bible talked about. So he knew this 10th one was gonna do the job right here. And so that 10th time, man, that was in chapter 12. Okay, chapter 11 was the plague of darkness. Now chapter 10, but in the book of Exodus, we're still in the book of Exodus. That's when the firstborn of all the boys, all the males died in Egypt. Now, again, it wasn't the Israelites. They were in Egypt too, but none of them died. Only the boys from the Egyptians. And Pharaoh had a son, and he died. That was when he finally told them, leave. Now, when he told them to leave, they didn't just leave. They didn't just go empty handed. No, 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 no. They went, they had property, they had silver, they had gold, they had food, they had they had their cattle, they had everything that they needed to survive. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference when they got their freedom. They didn't just get their freedom and just said, okay, now you go and survive. No, 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 no. They had resources. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference. Okay. Now, uh, that pretty much leads us. So just a recap here. We talked about the background of Moses. Then we talked about the instructions when he was on Mount Horeb. That's when he had the signs performed. And then the third section there, that's when we talked about the plagues. Now the fourth section here, this is when we're going to talk about the part of the Red Sea briefly. And so basically at this moment, this goes into chapter 14 here. Now, uh, at this moment, that's when they got freed, man. You know what I mean? I hang on just real quick here. Back in when the firstborn were killed there, something really important was established that day too. The Passover was established. Now the Passover is a Jewish holiday that's still celebrated today. You know, some people probably heard of the Passover. Well, basically, this is when it started because that night, God told Moses to tell the Israelites that they had to sacrifice an animal, a lamb, a sheep, perfect, no spots. Okay. And in the process, what they had to do was take the blood and put it over the post of the door. You know, that's pretty much the top part of the door. And what that did was it allowed the spirit that came throughout the night that God sent out to pass over their place and not harm anybody inside of that home. And if they did not do that, you know what I mean, then hey, you know what I mean? So the Egyptian didn't know anything about that, you know what I mean? So that's the reason why that spirit of death went by and killed all of their firstborn. So that spirit literally passed over them. And so that's what the name Passover comes from. You know what I mean? And again, that's a Jewish holiday that's still celebrated today. And then they eat special meals that's prepared for that as well. But that's when it first started. So going back to chapter 14, when God parted the Red Sea for through Moses there. So at this time, that's when we had they were traveling. They finally got out of there. You know what I mean? They're heading out and they're leaving and they're singing and they're joining. You know what I mean? They're like, man, we out of slavery now because man, they was in a slavery. You know what I'm saying? So they was working all day. You know what I'm saying? And Pharaoh was letting up, man. You know what I mean? And so there was a cloud that was in front of them, that was traveling in front of them to lead them in the direction they were supposed to go. And so as they were walking, the cloud would be, you know what I mean, a light for them, you know what I mean, a guide for them, if you will. It was an angel that God had placed, you know, in the form of a cloud that pretty much had traveled in front of them. That's how they were moving forward. Now, Pharaoh, man, you know, he thought about that, man. He changed his mind again. He said, you know what, man, forget that, man. They killed my son, messed up all the livestock. They put all these plagues up. Man, I'm finna go back and I'm finna kill him right now. And that's what that's what he wanted to do. So guess what he did? He changed his mind. So he went back out, got his army, got his chairs, horses, say, hey man, let's go get him. You know what I'm saying? And so they saw your boy Pharaoh coming back. You know what I mean? And so they got scared. They like, yo, hey man, say he about to kill us. You know what I'm saying? And so and then they happened to run and you know had to cross the Red Sea. And if you look on the map, the Red Sea, you know, you ain't crossing that. You ain't just walking over there. You ain't just swimming over that. You know what I'm saying? So with that in mind, um, God had that cloud that was in the front had went to the back of them to separate them. You know what I mean? To keep them separated. Pharaoh's army from them. You know what I mean? And in the midst of it, while that had happened, um, they had to get in front of this. They had to cross that river through that sea. You know what I mean? A sea. So Moses prayed to God and said, hey, you know what I mean? I need you, God. I need you. I need your help. You know what I mean? To get out of here. These people are grumbling. These people, you know what I mean? They tripping. You know what I'm saying? So I need to, you know, we need to figure out how to get out of here. God told him stretch out his hand. You know what I'm saying? And basically what he did, he has a strong wind to come by. And that is the famous story. If you haven't heard it, you definitely need to go back and read it. You know what I mean? It's in Exodus chapter 14. That's when he parted the Red Sea. We're talking about a sea, right? A sea, a wall. The sea came up, it split. All right, there was a water on the left side, water on the right side. You know what I'm saying? And so basically, when they walked through that sea on dry land. Yes, on dry land. You gotta read it. It's it's in chapter 14, in the book of Exodus. And after they crossed, you know, on dry land, Pharaoh said, you know what, we going too. We crossing too. And they tried to cross, man, but soon as all the Israelites made it over, God told him to put his hand back over, reach out, stretch out his hand again. And guess what? They all drowned. Right there. All of them. Dead. Yeah. So, uh, man, that was, man, just imagine that, you know, just imagine the sea, you know what I'm saying, just standing up like that, you know what I mean, you walking through and then you see it just, you know, just splash all back down and just kill all these people, man. I mean, that's a horrific sight, you know what I mean? So after that, in chapter 16, they made it across the sea. But guess what? These people were still mad, man. You know what I'm saying? They were mad. They were upset. Why was they mad? They mad because they tripping like, hey, man, we out here in the wilderness now. We're in the forest. You know what I'm saying? This Man, we could have stayed back in Egypt for this. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I would at least back in Egypt, we was eating all we wanted to. We had a place to stay. And this happens to us sometimes. You know what I mean? When God is trying to move us to a different place, a different location in our life, trying to move us in a different direction where we should go, we always get to thinking about the past, and we always start talking about, you know, I remember we used to do this, or we used to do that. You know what I mean? And we not looking forward. You know what I mean? And so this happened for 40 years, man. They were in there for 40 years. 40 years. Okay. Now, they did get water, food, you know what I mean? It just wasn't the same type of they was eating over there in Egypt. You know what I mean? They provided, you know, God provided manna and quail, you know what I mean, as a source of meat. And then he gave them manna, you know what I'm saying? Because they asked for bread and meat, you know what I mean? And manna was just pretty much like a little thin pieces of bread there. And the Bible said it tastes like wafers with honey. And this was what they needed. And he provided that on a daily basis for them. And he provided it more times or twice as much on the sixth day, because he wanted them to rest on the seventh day, because he made the Sabbath day holy. You know what I mean? So that's another thing that had been put into place, you know what I mean, when they were in the wilderness there. So this leads us to our last section here. Now, this is the Ten Commandments. All right. So the Ten Commandments. Now, This is where it all leads up to. You know what I mean? The Ten Commandments. This is the reason why God sent them out to go and get his people from Egypt. He came back. Now, a whole lot happened at the end. So I encourage you guys, highly encourage you guys to go back and read it because there's a lot of stuff that I just didn't put in the story because, in this session here, because obviously it would take up too much time. And I don't want to take up too much of you guys' time. I want to respect everybody's time. I'm already going over a little bit here. I'll usually try to keep it down at 30 minutes here. But just bear with me, please. Bear with me. So Exodus 20. I'm just going to read out the Ten Commandments to you. And again, if you want to go back and read them for yourself, it's in Exodus chapter 20. Now I read the NIV version of the Bible. That's the New International Version. The King James Version, which is probably a lot of the version that a lot of us grew up on. And it's just confusing. I'll be straight up. It's just confusing to me. You know what I mean? So, it basically it was written way back in the 15th, 16th century. You know what I mean? So it talks like that, like back then. You know what I mean? So the NIV version actually talks like how we talk today, right now. You know what I mean? So, but a lot of people don't like it, and I understand. I get it. But this is where I read from. Okay, so we're gonna read we're gonna read the Ten Commandments here. So, number one, you shall have no other gods before me. Commandment 2, you shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. Okay, command 3, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuse his name. 4, command 4, remember the Sabbath day. That's what we talked about when they rested on that seventh day there. When he told them not to work it. And it goes all the way back to the book of Genesis there, and when he created the heavens and earth, and he rested on the seventh day as well. So going back to that, sorry about that. I just want to give a little background. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor to and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son, your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animal, nor your foreigner residing in your town. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Okay. 5, honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. And he's talking about taking them to the promised land, in a new land that they're going to be taken away from Egypt there. 6, you shall not murder. I think that's pretty clear. 7, you shall not commit adultery. That's basically when you have sex when you're married. Outside of your marriage, when you have sex with someone else that you're not married to. 7, you shall not steal. That's 8. 9, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. And 10, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Covet, that's just basically another word saying you shouldn't love, you shouldn't enjoy, you shouldn't want, you shouldn't desire, your neighbor. And your neighbor just could be anybody that that you see in the world. It doesn't necessarily have to be, literally your neighbor, the person that lives next door to you. But those are the Ten Commandments there. A lot happened after that. A lot happened in between that time there. Later on in the chapter, it talks about how the um, Ten Commandments were given to the people, and it was in the form of these two tablets, stone tablets back then, because there wasn't pen and paper to write on. It was stone tablets, and they were engraved in there. And after that, that's when there came 613 laws, and these laws were given out. But I didn't want to take up too much of you guys' time. Again, I've already gone over this, but I just wanted to share that with you. That way, you can guys can have a better understanding, or at least some sort of understanding about the whole story line of Moses, who he is. And again, just to kind of recap everything before we go ahead and close it up here. We talked about Moses' background. That was the first thing we covered. And then we talked about the signs that Moses, God had given him the signs so that way he can reveal it to other people or to the elders there. And then we talked about the 10 plagues that were in Egypt there when he told them to let the people go. Then we talked about the part of the Red Sea. That's when the sea is separated, and then we talked about the Ten Commandments there, and we just finalized it up. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope that you guys have a better understanding of it. Later on in this on the channel here, we're gonna go over this story in detail. But again, I want to bring this to everyone's attention in case they haven't read the story before, and the Ten Commandments, and again Moses and how it all that got started. So. I thank you guys for staying in, hanging out with your boy. Watch the whole video, and I ask that you please subscribe and like, comment. Below, and if there's any questions, anything like that, just say, hey, what about this part, or where did you get that from, or any type of questions you have like that, so that way we can, because maybe if you have a question, maybe somebody else has that other same question too, but they just don't. They don't want to ask, you know what I mean? So if you have a question there, yeah, just feel free to ask, you know what I mean? So it's all good. Again, this is Will with CTC Lifestyle. We thank you guys for tuning in, and we ask that you come back and see us and check us out. Anyway, you guys have a good one. I will see you at the top. God bless. Hey guys, before you leave, we want to thank you for coming to our channel and checking us out. If you enjoyed that video, please click on this link right here so you'll be able to watch the next video. Thanks a lot and have a blessed day.